Hey, hey, and welcome to
This is how
another
we start.
episode. I am Dagny,
And I am Damali.
and in this episode, we want to share with you the dynamics and evolution of sibling relationships, in particular, our own experience and what we've learned through the different phases of our own growing up together and interactions and transformations and things of that sort. So to
Yes,
start,
yes.
okay, I guess now we can reveal who's older and who's younger.
I guess so.
I guess we'll have to do that. Yes. Okay. So yes, Dagny is the older one, and then Damali is the younger one. And we
Yes.
are next to each other in terms of the order of siblings.
Yes.
So, Damali, I'm going to ask you to start. And I want to ask you, how would you describe the evolution of our relationship in terms of where we started and where we are now?
That's a tough one, man. Uh, you mean as like babies, like fetuses, and then
Wow. Wow. No, I
I
meant in
guess I'll
like
have
the
to try to
other
remember my
dimension where we
memories.
met in the other dimension
Ah,
before coming into
yes.
this dimension.
Yes.
Definitely.
I guess, yeah, I guess I will say it's definitely evolved. It's definitely evolved a
Mm,
lot, I think. I think of course when we were younger as children, it was more influenced by our parents, right? Because we were both living under the same roof and things like that. Whereas of course, as we've gotten older, it's kind of changed since we're living in different locations and things like that. But I like to think that we've gotten closer, I think, as we've kind of grown more and learned more about our own identities and figured out what we like and we don't like, things like that. Um, I think there definitely are, I guess, maybe less, I suppose, comparisons, I think. Because
mm,
I know when even though we have pretty good relationship, but of course when I was younger, like everyone knows how it is, where it's like, oh, the oldest does all of these things, and then if the youngest is kind of different, you're like, oh, I have to be like her, or else I'm doing
mm,
something wrong, right? Which isn't true, right? So there was some of that comparison stuff. I think mostly around like high school age. I think
mhm.
where we're thinking that like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't reach that level, or things like that, right? But as I've gotten older and we've like grown into our own stuff, it's not so much of an issue for me. And I'm kind of like always just like for all my siblings, always like congratulating them, and I
Mm.
can't wait what they'll do next, and what the next thing will be that they succeed at. And as I've gotten older too, I've gotten like less. I'm more out of my head, I guess, and I can see things more objectively, kind of thing. I can see the things that my siblings are great at, or the things they struggled at, and things like that. So I definitely think as we've gotten older, and I guess I've matured more, I suppose, um, it's gotten a little bit. I guess I'm more like I guess most of it like a more open kind of thing, and we can kind of talk about more things, I guess. Um, and and I've noticed we can both help each other more. I don't know. I guess when I was younger, I was always kind of like, Dagny can do more stuff, or she's more responsible. She can do more than like she can give more to it than I can, because I'm like, oh, I'm just the younger one, so I can't do anything and like
Mm.
whatever. But as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, I can help her too. Oh, okay, I'm useful too. I can actually like,
Mhm.
I can actually do something. Okay. So that's been nice, kind of thing. And also in high school, it was lovely when she's the one driving and had to wake me up early in the morning.
Hmm.
And when I wouldn't wake up and we really had to get on time to school, I remember
Yeah.
that time. It's lovely we don't have to do that now.
Indeed. Indeed.
So yes, that's kind of like that's what I could say
Overall,
to
yeah.
start.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I would agree on that. I feel like our relationship has had a variety of phases. I think for me, the beginning part before starting school, I think, was one where we were more close. I think we started out actually very close and still like, I guess, learning because we're both young. And then I was the one who could understand you the best or the most in the house, kind of thing, when you were younger, because the deal of you were already talking and everything, but I couldn't understand how none of all
I
the
wouldn't
adults
speak.
all the adults claim they don't understand you. And I'm like, she said she wanted more water. How could you not understand what she said? But yes, so
When she isn't using
definitely
words.
she's using some words. I don't understand. But I think the those phases kind of morphed a bit once we started going to school. And then that also started like what you noted of there's a difference in terms of, well, if I'm the older one, there's some things I can pick up or catch on to faster, sort of deal. Like I can possibly ride the
Mhm.
bike faster than when you're starting, sort of deal, because I'm a little ahead or a little bigger or things like that. And then later, yes, definitely middle school, high school, where I also took note of the differences in attitude
Shift.
or differences in what?
Oh no, I said the shift. You notice the shift.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely difference and shift in
Mhm.
attitude. And on my end, sometimes feeling not understood or feeling a bit confused. Or I guess also from being like, sort of being like, oh, like you look at the oldest as like, oh, well, they're doing everything. Well, then while I'm the oldest, I'm seeing like, oh, well, I internalize like, no, I need to be doing everything as an example or being responsible kind of deal,
Mm.
thinking that's being helpful, but then not knowing that that's also possibly making people feel like they can't do anything or they're not needed or things like that. Or then I'm also just like not asking for help because I'm just like, I'm supposed to do
Doing
everything
everything.
anyway. Yeah, I'm supposed to carry it all on my back, sort of deal. And even though I'm on the floor, but it's fine.
Yep, it's
So
fine.
it's
It's
fine,
fine.
totally fine. So, and then even with like after high school, I feel now that we were no longer at home, so we're not seeing each other as much. And so there will be gaps of communication where some of that I think from high school was still lingering, but we weren't
Mm.
necessarily, not necessarily not paying attention, but not necessarily directly dealing with it. And then I feel another shift occurred some years ago when I was in a very low point emotionally and mentally. And it was a first for me to actually like reach out to my siblings to let them know that I'm going through something that is kind of concerning me because my normal coping mechanisms are not working, sort of thing, even though my normal coping mechanisms would be suppress it and keep moving. And that wasn't working anymore. Right. And the way
Yeah.
you showed up for me during that time was, I think, was part of the reason why another shift or phase for our relationship occurred. Because it was my first time being vulnerable and truly asking for help and seeing how you really did show up for me. And as well as then vice versa,
I'm a real one.
exactly. But then vice versa, you then also realizing that even though I don't ever look like what I've been through it. Like I'm going through stuff that most people don't realize because I won't say it, or I would try to deal with it myself. So being able to see that, like, even though the older one looks like, oh, they got everything all together and it's fine, but turns out the older one is actually has a lot of similarities to you too, of possibly not trying to figure stuff out on her own and doesn't always have the answers and can get scared too, kind of thing. So I think that was a beautiful shift for us as young adults to be able to see each other beyond the first and second
Mm.
status of siblings. That actually, yes, we are
Yeah.
both responsible and we both have our own personality traits. And as you said, that like, no, we can actually help each other as equals as opposed to other assumptions or projections that had been made.
Yeah, or a certain hierarchy that we think
Yes. Yeah.
is there, right? Yeah. Mhm.
So that,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
kind of what,
I agree. Yeah. I remember that too. I remember that night too when you were texting and everything and you're like, so I'm going through it. Basically
yes.
not to say everything, right?
Right.
And
Right.
it's funny because at that time I wasn't feeling my best either. Like I was also feeling kind of like not, but then I was like, well, okay, well, she's going through something and I'm going through something and it's like the weekend, so let me go and see what, kind of thing. And I went, yeah. And because I'm a real one, right? So I
Yes.
showed up, right?
Yes.
And I went ahead and it was helpful for me too, because it's like and I didn't feel like equipped for it.
Mm.
I didn't know like what advice. I didn't know what advice to give. I didn't
Right.
know like what, kind of thing. I'm like, what do I know? I'm in my 20s. I don't know what I'm doing. Or,
Mhm.
or maybe I was younger. No, I think, yeah, I was in my 20s. Yeah,
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
20s. But yeah, so I just kind of was like, well, I'll just try my best, and if I can help in any way, then
Mhm.
I can go ahead and help, right?
Mhm.
And I agree, that definitely is, it was a shift, because then it's like, oh, okay, then we can both help each other
Mm.
and be at different points in our lives, and still share. I mean, of course, now I'm perfect at giving advice. I'm just kidding.
Mhm.
Let's say better. Okay, I'm better at it, all right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Adulting, or but yeah, I do think, yeah, and in high school too, yeah, that and I remember that too, yeah, when we were like little kids and we were younger, and I wouldn't talk. I could talk, but I just didn't
Yes.
for some reason,
Yeah.
because I do what I want, Leo, whatever. And and I remember you were the only one that understood what I was saying.
Yes.
And you would be like, why does everyone understand, kind
Yep.
of thing.
Yep. Yep.
So, but yeah, so I definitely agree with you. I saw the shift. I see it a lot more now. I
Mm.
don't know if you feel that way too. Like when it was happening, it was like, I do remember, like it was like, of course you were not in my head, but in my
Mhm.
head I was like going through other confidence issues or other insecurity issues and things like that. And so I
Mhm.
think it kind of affected everyone around me, kind of thing. Like I even
Mm.
remember sometimes, like for, like, I guess, my parents, I guess, or my mom, kind of thing, would be like, oh, she doesn't, like, I feel like she didn't fully understand what I was going through, or
Mhm.
understand me at that time. But I was like, I don't understand either, so we both don't
Mm.
understand. Well, we'll just
Right.
figure this out, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Which I guess is normal when you're a teenager. It's a weird time, and you don't really know, what's going on.
Mhm.
um but it's interesting when to look back, to be like, oh, okay, so that happened, and then we moved on to this, and then we're here now, kind of thing. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, it would have been interesting if we if we did like, if podcasting was a thing when we were
Mm.
teenagers. Like,
Right?
I wonder how that
Aye.
would have gone.
Indeed. I don't know. I'll just be
Right?
complaining about like how can we not wake
Everything.
up to go to school? Like what are we doing? Because
I
now
know,
we're
that's
both
all we would
late.
talk about.
What are we doing? Exactly.
Right?
So yeah.
Yeah.
So then with
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about the myths and stereotypes when it comes to being
Oh, yes.
the first child or the second child. Yeah. Because I've there's been quite a lot more, like, okay, when it comes to psychology of children, or like what attitudes or traits or experiences people are supposed to have. And there's a lot that they take note of when it comes to, well, the order of which child is within the siblings. This will always be their experience, or this is how they're always going to navigate their lives through childhood and through adulthood. So could you share in your own words an experience
Oh,
in
damn.
being the second child? How do you feel about the types of things that are said about, oh, the struggles the second child may have, or the perks and benefits the second child may have being in the sibling unit? Which parts of that resonate with you, and which parts of that do you feel people need to pay more attention to in terms of having a better understanding of that experience?
Yeah. Yeah, being a middle child is interesting, man, because, like, we're kind of stuck right in the middle. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Yeah, it was weird, because, like, I remember when I was first born, right? And, well, obviously not at the time, but right at that
Uh-huh.
time, I jumped out of my mom's. I'm just kidding.
Uh-huh.
But at first, it was just like you and I, right?
Right.
And I was the one that was the youngest. It was about me, and it's about me, 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 me. I'm the Leo. I'm the youngest, whatever. And then my younger sister came out, and I was like, okay, hold on a minute. Let's breathe. This is about me. I'm the baby. Let's go, right? And then, of course, with my younger sister, we one minute we were best friends, next minute we were, like, screaming at each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and then later, the little brother came. He came much later, so there wasn't so much of the whole, like, oh, I'm the youngest, like, kind of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, there's definitely been, like, ups and downs. Like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, I don't want to have responsibility. I don't want to have that many responsibilities. Like, I'm the younger one. I don't want to have to deal with this. Like, I don't have to be everything or be perfect or anything, because whatever. And then there's the other side where it's like, actually, I'm quite mature too. I'm responsible too. Like
Mhm.
I can do stuff too, like,
Mhm.
and then there's the other side of like if I do like mess something up, sometimes I'll have a feeling of like, oh, I messed up this one thing, so but then that means that I can't I'm not really supposed to be the oldest kind of thing, and feeling like I'm not like equipped to be old kind of thing. And sometimes as I get older, that's changed, but growing up, sometimes this feeling of like, oh well, it seems everybody else is like is figured it out more than I have. So, like sometimes, whether older siblings and younger siblings, sometimes I feel like, oh, everybody else figured it out. I'm the only one that's like, oh, or feeling like maybe I should have been the youngest one. Like maybe I'm not supposed to be the middle, and it's
Mhm.
like this weird, and then or the feeling of being like the black sheep kind of thing. Like you're
Mhm.
the one that like everyone else is like this way and you're the different one kind of thing. And like figuring that out. So it's like a weird like feeling of like am I acting too young or am I acting too old or kind of thing, like
Mhm.
which one is it? Which and of course like in reality you just act how you act, like you just be yourself and that's it kind of thing. But it's an interesting feeling, and of course it changes as you live with your siblings versus when you're not living with them. And especially when I if I because right now all of our us siblings are living in different places, right?
Mhm.
So it's always interesting to see how the dynamic like changes when you meet up with your sibling after a while, kind of thing, and you see how things have shifted and changed. But the one thing as I've gotten older is that it doesn't really, I mean, it matters, but like not when you're needed. Like it doesn't matter if you're the youngest, oldest, middle, whatever. You can still be of use. Like you can still be helpful, and also like it's okay if an older person is mature. Maybe an older sibling is more mature at one thing, but the younger sibling is more mature at something else.
Right.
Like you all kind of like it the age, that usual thing, the age is nothing but a number kind of
Mhm.
thing,
Mhm.
where you can still be helpful. Like I know I've heard really great advice from like my brother, for example, and he's
Mhm.
like 10 years younger than I am. And like
Mhm.
sometimes he'll be saying some really heavy, intelligent stuff. And I'm like, damn, like I didn't even think of it that way,
Mhm.
even though I'm
Mhm.
supposed to be the oldest. And the same thing with, like what's going
Yeah.
on, right?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, I know I think I've given good advice to my older sibling Dagny as well.
Mhm.
And said things where like maybe she didn't know that and I knew that, and I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
thing. So it's definitely an interesting like like never feeling the feeling of like where do I fit, because I'm in the middle, but like how who should I be closer to? Who should I connect with more, like the older one or the younger one, or like how do I, you know? And I know there are times in my life where I didn't want to be an older sibling. Like
Mhm.
I'm the baby, that's it. Like I didn't want to have that kind of responsibility or be looked at in that way kind of
Mhm.
thing, because I figured
Mhm.
I couldn't handle it, or I didn't want that. Um, but as I've gotten older, it seems that obviously you have to get more responsible and more mature as you get older,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
things kind of like straighten out. But yeah, but still once in a while I'm like, am I doing this right? Is this how the middle should I be in this way, or should I be more of this or less of this?
Mhm.
Um, so it's definitely interesting. It's interesting. We'll see how my thoughts change in like another. It's like I feel like every few years I'm like I have another thought of like, oh, so
Right.
this is how it feels to be this sibling, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. And then and yeah, and what about you, Dagny? I don't know how it feels like to be the only oldest, and how do you feel never being in the middle? I'm just I guess
Indeed.
in our
Yes. Yeah.
dynamic, right?
I
How do you,
think.
or maybe I should ask like how you feel about middle child psychology,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And also feel about being like, yeah, the older one.
Okay.
I guess I can ask both those questions.
Okay. Then, okay, for the first one about how does the first feel about middle child psychology? I do see the pattern of comparisons a lot happening. And for
Mm,
it not necessarily because the first child is Angelica from Rugrats causing you, like telling you to do that, but the natural one human nature of like, well, if this is the only other kid in the house and they're able to do certain things or their personality is a certain way, and you can see they get certain responses from the adults, it's automatic the other child is going to try and figure out, okay, so am I supposed to do that? If that's how I'm supposed to be, and if I'm not, this is, am I defective? What is that? And then the added thing of depending on the family circumstances, where there's sometimes unfortunate circumstances for some where the parents actually would pitch the children against each other, or encourage them to be competing against each other and that sort of thing. Thankfully, we didn't have the competition stuff between us, but the comparison stuff
Yeah.
sometimes either out of frustration of like, why can't this be easier? If this is easier for one, why can't it be easier for the other? Or why can't it be faster for the other?
Yeah.
Those sorts of things, which was not meant to belittle the circumstance, but for a child, one inevitably would internalize that to feel like, oh, well, there must be something wrong if that's what's happening. And as the first who's still a kid in that situation, it's like I can only say so much or do so much because I can't erase what has already been said, or I can't erase what is happening because I'm not in the same class as you all the time, or I'm not, letting the teachers know that like, no, you have to interact with my sister this way. If you do it this other way, it's not going to, why can't y'all understand how to interact with her? Sort of like, why can't you get it? What's going on, you guys?
Right?
I'm not paid for this, but y'all don't get it. What's going on? So I do see I've noted that, and I've always been, I think as a first, I have this interesting perspective of like, I have the capacity or the vantage point to observe the evolutions of my siblings, because like I was already here, so I know
I've
where you
been here,
started. I've
like,
been here, okay,
from the beginning.
from the beginning. And so I know where you started. I observed a whole lot, even more than people may realize. And so I'm always rooting for the different phases and transformations, and always feeling so proud that like you're still here and you're still doing it and still learning more and more how to do it on your own terms, kind of thing. Which, so it never, to me, it was never a like competition type thing in that way for middle child stuff. So to answer the question about what's it like being the first and how that compares to the myths and the realities of being the first, I feel like for me, being the first means, for me, it was, I can tell from the jump that my parents have no idea what they're doing with a child.
Yeah.
You know,
What are diapers for? What are diapers for?
which I feel every first child recognizes very quickly. And I don't know if that's part of why we have the personalities of we're ready to roll up our sleeves and help you out because we can see you need the help. Okay. So there's some funny stories about kid Dagny doing stuff like that. And then I think for me, when it came time to start having siblings, it was an interesting dynamic where on the one hand, I'm excited for the new experience. And I saw you as like you're a live doll because like you're the size of a doll, but you move as opposed to my other dolls. So that's fun. And I'm totally devoted to having a sibling. That's great. But at the same time, I also felt like, am I not enough? Why did you need to bring another kid into the house when y'all barely understand what you're doing with me? Why do we need more? I thought we were doing great. I don't understand.
Right?
So there was part of that. There was part of that too, where it wasn't for me, it was never a jealousy thing in terms of, oh, now you need to pay attention more to the baby because, they can't hold their head up or something while I'm able to walk by myself. It wasn't necessarily that, but I do recall having both of those feelings happening at the same time of I'm excited for this because it's a new experience, but also what does that mean in terms of where do I stand in value, or where do I is this a reflection of have I been doing a good job? Is that why we're going to bring more kids into the house, or am I not doing a good job. That's why we need to bring more kids into the house, that sort of thing. And then later, I think the myth of first are they grow up to be very hyper independent and self-sufficient and possibly controlling and all second parent type of vibe. I can see regardless of home circumstances, because I do think what the guardians or the adults within the unit do, I think they do very much determine how extreme that is or not. But regardless of that, I do feel some of that is true for every firstborn, regardless if there is direct, deliberate parentification happening or it's indirect, but still happening. Yes, we do tend to take on more responsibilities that we really don't see our younger siblings doing ever. So, I mean, I was making y'all's lunches and lunch boxes.
True.
When I was 6 or 7 years old.
And they were delicious.
And they were delicious. And I was cutting the crust from the bread and making it all kinds of things.
All dramatic.
All dramatic. But I'm only like, 7 or 8 years old doing this. And at the time, I didn't feel like I'm Cinderella in a basement doing this and it's so terrible. But, it was my way of like, no, I can see that, well, both of our parents are working at that time. So this is my way to be useful. Like the whole thing for the firstborn is we're always seeking or looking to be useful. That's similar to what you were noting of like, can I be useful if the first one actually, their whole embodiment is, I am here to be useful. That's why I am here kind of thing. So, but I'm not sure if any of my other siblings, I mean, did y'all make my lunch ever? Or did you make younger siblings' lunches ever needed to? I'm not sure. I don't recall. For me, I don't remember. I don't think so. And so things like that, where we did do experiences that sometimes it feels like as the first, you do balance a little of adulting earlier than your younger siblings may have to, or actually your younger siblings get more privileges or benefits because the first had to go through other experiments or is already taking on the responsibility for
experiments, experiments.
Exactly. So because we're the first, it's like, oh, this program looks good. Let's put the first one in it. And if it doesn't work, the other siblings don't have to go to that program or go to that school or sign up for that camp or go to that tutor because, well, the first one already went through whatever they had to go through to show that this was not worth the money or the time or anything like that. So one does sometimes feel as the first where it's like, I picked up scars for you that you didn't have to pick up. You know what I'm saying? Like I got all my purple hearts over here.
Not purple hearts.
Indeed. And I think again, it's that is inevitable regardless of the household you're in. I don't see it as, I know a lot will describe that as that is a form of trauma because a kid should not have to do those things. They should just be a kid and not think of responsibilities or not be privy to the frustrations the parents are going through or adults are going through. And I do think that the first does tend to automatically be privy to like if the adults in the house are having financial struggles or relationship struggles or, these sorts of things that technically the kid shouldn't necessarily know about or wouldn't even understand what's going on. And I do think even though the younger siblings may get glimpses of it, but I do feel the firstborn actually gets the brunt of it completely, depending again on how mature or depending on like the spectrum of maturity of the adults in the house, it can be extreme or not, but I think for me, it kind of, when people talk about how the firstborns are the ones who grow up and they're like, I already raised children because I have younger siblings. And I actually have a lot more questions and standards when it comes to the people in my life because I've been observing adults for a very long time and taking note of their dynamics and things like that and what doesn't want to repeat or wants to continue. So it's sure, maybe some of it can be considered traumatic or different than what the youngest would deal with. I do feel that makes us quite unique in our perspectives, I think, and we should be given credit not only for everything that we've done, because I think firstborns, we do a lot, but also for who we are. Because if for those of us who choose to grow up and not be the Grinch, and choose to grow up and not, be hating on everybody, or and some, yeah, rightfully so, they have valid reasons for what they went through. But for those of us who grow up and can still come from a loving space on our own terms, and still be useful on our own terms, and still be a blessing on our own terms, I think that's a beautiful thing too.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I definitely agree with that. That you kind of are like an oracle in the oracle from the Matrix, seeing everything. I am all seeing and all knowing, right? Like, and yeah, I definitely, I guess I'm getting older because I definitely see that with the younger siblings too. Like when the younger siblings do something, I'm feeling all types of like, what are they doing, kind of thing. Like, whereas when I was younger, I was just like, I was like screaming and running everywhere, not
Yes.
even, I'm like, I don't want responsibilities, kind of thing. And trying to like not deal with it because I'm like, well, Dagny's doing it, so I'm gonna go. Like, I mean, like she
Mm-hmm.
made the sandwiches, so I'm just gonna, kind of thing. Um, but I do think, well, I suppose the dynamic change because like with us, it's like for us, it's like the gap is not that much, right, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of our ages, right? And the same with
Right.
we have a younger sister also, but I think it changes with we have a even younger one who's
Mm-hmm.
the younger brother that we have that, and he's like much younger than we are,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that changes things because then we all kind of are the oldest in that way,
Mm.
because since when he was born, we were already old enough to kind of, you know, deal with stuff. So our parents, I guess, were able to give us all even more, responsibility in
Yeah.
that sense, right?
Mhm.
And then there were times too where you had gone off to college, right? And then myself and younger sibling were left with,
Mhm.
the youngest, and so that changes things too. So we all now when I was younger, I because I don't think I did I learn to change a diaper with the like the younger sister, or was it just with the younger brother? Like I don't
Exactly.
even like I feel like you were more of that, right? But then when
Yes.
the brother came, then all of us all of a sudden,
Right.
all three of us girls were like, okay, we got to learn how to
Diaper,
give
the
him milk. We
bottle.
got to learn how
Yes.
to the bottle. We got to give him a bath. We gotta
Right.
we gotta clean up his poop, like
Right.
clean up the diaper and all of that stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I think it's different because like it's not the first time for the parents also.
Mm.
So I think the pressure of it changes
Mhm.
maybe
Mhm.
because the parents are more settled now and like we've dealt with three other babies, so this
Mm.
other one we can kind of handle in a different sense, right?
Right.
Um, but I definitely think it's interesting. Um, yeah. So with the and then from I guess from that we could I also feel like for me for the middle child there were some times too where like I think it was all my siblings, mostly I guess like you and the younger one,
Mhm.
um where I kind of try to take myself out of competition, even though there
Mm.
was no competition, but like in my head, I was like, well, they're good at that, so I shouldn't do that. I should do
Mm.
something else instead. Because
Mm.
then if I do something else, then there's no way we can be compared,
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
was my kind of weird way of thinking of it, where it's like, okay, well, and even if maybe there was something, oh, I like that too, but oh wait, no, I shouldn't do that. Let me do
Mm.
something else. Oh wait, no, they're doing that. Let me not do that, kind of thing.
Right. Right.
So that was a thing I went through when I was younger also, and so things that maybe I haven't even explained to my parents or not, because I think that there'll be times where I take my stuff myself out of things when I was younger, and my parents are kind of be like, "Why is she? What is she doing? Why is she was fine before? Why isn't she now?"
Yeah.
And I never kind of explained it to them, so I guess I'm
Right.
explaining it now, and how I just sometimes like. You know how it is. Sometimes there's like this fear, not only a fear of failure, but a fear of success or a
Mhm.
fear of competition, or like
Mhm.
this idea that, oh, if I don't get into the race, then like people won't put expectations on me, or
Mm.
people won't take, they won't like, I don't have to be expected to do anything if I don't do it, kind of thing. And I think that some of that is still it's a little bit less now, but I think some of that still goes into how I am. Like like I won't be stressed out if I just don't compete. I just don't if I
Mhm.
don't do anything, then no problem, right? And just
Mhm.
do things more simply, do things maybe a little bit more bare minimum than I guess,
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
I could because as we can see, well, the way the world is now, sometimes doing the most and 100% is not always, as
Mm-hmm.
fulfilling, I suppose that it could be.
Yeah.
Um, right. So it's interesting to see that
Mm-hmm.
dynamic there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess since that is a good segue, we're talking about expectations.
Yeah.
So, do we want to go into that, talking about expectations of adults or expectations of parents? Dagny, would you like to start?
Sure. And then when you're asking in terms of their expectations of their children or of
Yes, yes.
themselves, or okay.
Yeah. Or even like I like that you brought up that point about teachers and
Mm-hmm.
how like if the teacher had the older sibling,
Mm-hmm.
then they treat the younger one differently
Mm.
than they would if there was no older sibling to compare it to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So we can talk about that, about how adults act and how
Right.
parents act with
Yeah.
expect
I would
yeah.
say from what I've experienced, I think it would be nice if adults could remember that siblings are individuals first.
Mm,
Yes, they come
yeah.
from the same unit. Yes, for us, they are brought up in the same household, but you should you should try to get to know them as who they are in front of you instead of, oh, this is Dagny's younger sister. Hey, Dagny's younger sister, before bothering to actually
Yeah.
learn this is Damali, you know? So, or accident. I don't know. Did anyone ever accidentally call you Dagny outside of our
Uh
parents who would like, because there's too many names to remember, they'll be
they're
calling us?
just no, they're just getting older. uh,
Yeah. But
uh,
because that
I
dynamic ends up
remember.
making it seem like there's a shadow. Like the older one has this huge shadow that the younger ones cannot get out of underneath because everyone
Hmm.
met the first one before they met everybody else. Now, that can be
Yeah.
good or bad because if you have an
Huh?
older one who's just been causing chaos and trouble and all this kind of damage, you then are going to be treated a certain way when you come up because then it's like, oh, now we need to like be even more disciplined or remove this person completely because the one who came before you with the same last name was a nuisance.
Mhm.
While for us, I feel like there was a we both have different talents and trying to fit
Mhm.
insisting, well, if Dagny's talented in this, why aren't you? Doesn't make sense because she's not my clone. So why would she? What? How does that make any sense? Yes.
Mhm.
But then also
Yeah.
in reverse, the expectation of if adults know that I'm the first. So now it's like I should already know everything instead of taking the time to explain something to me or teach something to me. It's well, you should already
Right.
know that you're the oldest, right? I mean, I'm gonna explain this. Let's keep on go. Let's move. Like let's get through it. Kind of thing. And then as the first, being made to feel like, okay, well, I let me continue to mold myself as if I know everything because there's no space for the first to ask questions, or there's no space for the first to make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, or there's no space for the first to just figure it out. Instead, the first is internal as the first kid is the kid mind is internalizing that there is no space for her to figure it out. She needs to already know and already get it, sort of thing. There's
Mm.
no
Yeah.
space for failure because the world will come to an end. And even though adults in hindsight will insist, I never said that, or that's not what we meant, it's like, but you got to remember you're
Yeah.
dealing with a kid. Everything they
Hmm.
internalize it as if it's about them, sort of thing. They
Hmm.
don't yet
Even
understand.
if it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't developed to understand yet that part of this is a nuance of your own lens as the adult talking to them and your own beliefs and perspectives. And so you really should just take it at face value instead of thinking this adult is actually directly telling you what you can, who you can or cannot be. So I think as
Right.
the first expectations that my kid self internalized was like, you're expected to be you're expected to be valued or loved by what you do and what you
Mm. Yeah.
deliver. And that's anything outside of that can kind of be sometimes felt like it's being dismissed or disregarded, sort of thing. And then that delivering and doing also
Right.
means that the first is usually asked to sacrifice more. Like, especially when there's other siblings, yes, you wanted to go here, but your other siblings prefer this, so we're going to do this in like we're going to all be carted off together with this one thing, when actually maybe some siblings would prefer to do something else as individuals, as opposed to always like, well, we can't go to the arcade today because the other siblings want to do this instead, or the other sibling,
Tommy is sick.
Exactly. So we can't go there because Tommy doesn't like the other kids, so you're not going. That those types of things. As a kid, it does make you feel some kind of way, because it's like, but I don't understand. What does that have to do with me? Like, I just wanted to go outside. Like, why can't? Why am I having?
I'm not sick.
Exactly. Like, if they want to stay in, then let them stay inside. Like, why do we all have to now sit here? But again, as a kid, not understanding that either that's the best way the adult can accommodate all the four or how many kids are in the one space, because they're the only one responsible at that moment in time for the kids to not die right there, or that's their way, or that's their way of like trying to teach or implement by example, sharing or compromising or whatever. But it's, I think, a lot of those expectations, it would be, in hindsight, it would be lovely if adults just communicated more with children, like actually just
communicate,
like just break it down for the kid of, this is why we're doing this, and I'm trying to do this, that, the other. You are very valid to feel frustrated right now. I get it. But just for this time, this is what we're doing, or this is how I feel about this. And it's not a direct reflection on your identity and your value. I still love you regardless, because I think a lot of it's possible, speaking to other firstborns, that sentiment is something that one has to constantly disentangle or not cling to as an adult, or always having to console your inner child of like, no, that's actually not what they meant, but your feelings are valid, but it's okay. We're good now. It's all right.
Yeah. Right.
What about you?
Yeah, I definitely, I agree with that. I remember seeing this like video, I think it was on Instagram, where there was, I think it was a little boy, and he was talking to his mom, and the mom was just sitting there, and the little boy was like, "Oh, mom, I don't know why I felt so mad about that, and then it made me cry because I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that, and I felt really bad about it and everything." And the mother was like, "Yes, I know. Yes, it's okay. You felt bad, but sometimes you just can't you can't do everything that you want to, and so that's why you got in trouble." And the kid was just explaining, and he wasn't crying or anything. He was just like trying to make sense of his feelings, because when you're a child, you don't really understand or what way, you just go with the flow of your emotions. And I think I agree, like sometimes adults are not perfect either, so and they have their own healing to deal with and their own inner child to deal with. And so sometimes I think I don't know, forget to just stop and be like, you try to kind of maybe just listen to the kids more too, and try to see things from the not to dumb yourself down in that way, but like you have to kind of see it from a child perspective, but don't treat them like a child, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like,
respect them.
Respect them, see them where they are, and really listen to them, and figure out what's going on with them, because the emotions are a lot, right? And I think I also remember I think you had shared something also about this teenager boy or something like that, where I think his mom is a psychologist, or I don't know what. And he was a teenager, so they weren't really connecting very well. And then I think the mother somehow was able to talk to him, and then the teenager boy broke down crying or something, and he was talking about how he couldn't manage his emotions, and he felt all of these feelings and he didn't know what to do with them. And so that's why he would act very cold sometimes to his mom, because he didn't know how to open up like he did before. And so I think communication is key. Also, listening is key also. Sometimes there doesn't really need to be an answer per se. Like, I feel like sometimes kids are not always looking for an answer. They just want to be heard, kind of thing. And so, and to be heard in the way they want to be heard. Sometimes, like, I think adults, they think like, oh, this is the way the child wants me to listen to them. And it's like, wait, are you sure? Like, kind of thing. And so I think that's kind of interesting. And I guess to again to segue with that, we're always segueing.
It's all good.
We can also talk about the do we want to get into the generational things, some of like the generational differences or generational trauma, or things that are carried down from ancestors, grandparents, and all of that.
Mhm.
And I guess the one thing I'll first start out with is like as I've gotten older, I guess I have more grace for it, I guess, or more like you're saying, like more compassion for it, where
Mhm.
like I realize that like you think that your parents or your adults are like superheroes and they can do everything and they're perfect and but like they're not.
Mhm.
And it's humbling but also kind of scary the older you get,
Mhm.
where like you realize, oh my gosh, my mom and dad are not, they're not superheroes, they're not
Mhm.
perfect. What?
Mhm.
I didn't know. What? You know? And I think this does, even if you get frustrated or you're annoyed or mad at them, or like, why can't they just do this and everything? But I think you have to show some kind of for us and some compassion and some like understanding of like part of them really didn't know what to do. Like they also were kind of like, and they, I mean, what are they supposed to just like? It's like, I mean, this is a metaphor, but like, if I can't change a diaper, do I ask the baby? No, I have to figure it out. Like, I
Exactly.
can't be like, I don't know how to do this. Ask the baby. Like, no,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I think the parents, especially if you don't have a lot of help around you, even if you do have help, it can be very hard to kind of know what to do, and you want to do the best you can, and then you think that if your kid cries or something doesn't work out, like you're a horrible parent, it's your fault, when that's
Mhm.
not true. It's
Mhm.
just you just, it's a learning process and you figure that out.
Mhm.
And I think as I've gotten older, I kind of tried to not be so angry about certain things that of course we're not going to talk about everything here because we don't want to
Mm.
get all too personal about it,
Right.
but things that I was really angry or annoyed at, or say things that made me cry, or things that really made me upset, that sometimes things would happen with adults or parents or whatever. And
Mhm.
as I've gotten older, I realized, oh, well, maybe they did this because of this, or oh, I see, because they didn't understand. That's why they
Mhm.
reacted. And I was like, why can't you just get where I'm coming from? I'm like, but they can't. They're seeing things from a different perspective.
Yes.
And even my siblings, like I think certain ways about my siblings, and then if I hear my parents saying something about my siblings, I'm like, that's not what are you talking
Mhm.
about? Like,
Right.
that's not what they mean. But I don't have their eyes, I don't have their
Mhm.
perspective. And
Mhm.
so of course, and then the same thing with the a little bit about the generational situations, where you think about how were our grandparents, like how
Mhm.
were their parents to them, and how were their families to them, and obviously that influences you too. Like if you
Mhm.
didn't have something as a child, then you want to try to give it to when you have a kid,
Mhm.
and even if maybe that doesn't fit, but you're kind of like, well, I went through this as a kid, so now and then if you haven't dealt with the inner healing you have to go through and all that stuff, or if you're really busy or going through a lot, it can
Mhm.
be difficult. So yeah, so in a roundabout way, I'm just saying that it as you become older, it's interesting to see that, oh, okay, so adults, need to figure this out, but it's really it's really hard to figure out,
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
So yeah. And what about you? What do you think about this other segue that we've gone
Yeah.
into now?
Yeah. I feel that that's what is so beautiful about taking the time to do this healing and reflections, because it's true that
Right.
everything that we experience and go through, parts of it is a reflection of what the variety of generations we come from have been experiencing and carrying. And I feel that each
Right.
generation, their role is to push the needle a little bit. They can't necessarily solve everything,
Yes.
but you take note, they all pushed with the cards they were dealt with, they push the needle a little bit. And the next generation is supposed to do a little more and a little more and a little
Hmm.
more. And the biggest thing where I think the bigger shifts happen is that usually those little bit happens when people are like, oh, I don't want to be anything like whatever adults in their life that they feel was an antagonist in their story or was the villain in their story of like, oh, I'm never
Yeah.
going to be like so and so, I'm going to be completely different and that sort of thing, which yes, that
Right.
causes a little bit of evolution and transformation, but I feel the
Right.
bigger growth happens when we're able to do like what we're doing now, of it's not about casting someone as a villain or the victim in the
Right.
story, is taking note of the strength that each generation we inherit that. So the fact that with
Yes.
what when you if you have the privilege to get to view your parents in that way of coming to a point where they are human, and
Mhm.
being very proud of them, of what they were able to achieve and experience through that. And being grateful to have the privilege of witnessing that being their child.
Agreed.
And then also taking note of, okay, now I take the baton and I'm going to push it even further or take it even higher, regardless if the previous generations can understand that or not, because that means you're taking it to an upgraded level, or you are the upgrade of these previous generations.
Yes.
So there's perspectives that we understand that previous generations 5 times behind us will be like, what are you talking about? Like, how could that even, we don't got time to think about that, sort of thing. So I feel that should be seen as something beautiful and proud to experience, as opposed to you're chipping away
Pointing
at,
fingers.
pointing fingers or chipping away at, after everything I've done for you, how could you claim this, is that, the other? Like, that's not, I feel like we miss the point when we are claiming that, when we're talking about these generational strengths and weaknesses and experiences. And it's like, well, if you're older now, what your parents did or didn't do, or what your great great grandparents didn't do, should not mean anything to you because you're an adult. So deal with it. And it's like, no, that's not, we're not looking to point fingers. It's not looking to blame people as to, I'm just like this because, my mom ate macaroni and cheese. Like, no, that's not what we're, like, that's not the point of the conversation. The point is, I'm looking to see like the archive of wisdom that our generations carry.
Yes.
That,
Archive of wisdom. Yes.
like the way my ancestors are set up, this audacity didn't come from a vacuum. Like,
Yep.
Come
exactly.
on now.
Amen.
So, exactly.
Let's go.
So, like, I feel like this is paying homage and tribute to those who came before us, that we should want to understand them. We should want to get a sense of, okay, how do these responses, why did they respond like this? And how can I choose to respond differently? Because we want to make sure that the generations after us don't have to repeat these lessons. They should be able to get new lessons because we already finished it, right? So that is, for me, that's what I see. The inner work is so important because it really is redefining our DNA. Like, that's part of the magic, I feel. And it's true that it's something that it's not always pretty, and it can be
easy.
painful at times. Yeah. But it's worth it. And I think it's really, really important. And it's true that I feel that sibling relationships reflect that as well, in terms of the way we interact with each other is partly due to the way our parents interact with each other and the way those parents interacted with them. Like, all of that is a cycle in itself. So if we're able to maintain a unit that in other parts of the family, siblings are not speaking to each other at all for a variety of reasons that they feel valid for, which is fine. But if we're able to surpass that, where regardless of our differences and what we're going through, we're still able to maintain that foundation of love and respect, regardless of gap of communication or gap of location. That's part of the inner work and healing that our previous generations are proud of, right? Because that's the point. I feel that's the point of even experiencing these cycles. Yeah.
All right. I definitely agree with that. Right. You need, and relationships take work, and any kind of relationships need there needs to be communication. There needs to be, we can't just like passively interact with people, right? There needs to be, and things will come up obviously as you change and get older and things like that. So I think that's great. I don't know if this if we keep going, like, this is gonna end up being like 5 hours, like, so on part 2
exactly,
we will continue what we'll probably generational curses.
You know what, for sure, we'll probably do another episode focus on generational strengths and trauma and stuff like that, because I feel there's so many layers and nuances to it. But I think a lot of layers, a beautiful way to open up the discussion. Yes,
I think so too. Very.
So for you listening, very wise. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we hope you did learn something or felt inspired. And we are looking forward to hearing from you, if you have siblings or not, or in terms of in general family relations dynamics that you're comfortable sharing. Reach out to us and let us know. We love hearing from you. And thank you so much for this conversation, Damali. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great.
Yes.
Hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
And
Until
we
next time.
will, until next time,
all
take care.
all love, all love.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. All right. Well, we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
All right. Bye.